So I recently have started doing what are called Spaces on X. They used to be called Twitter Spaces. These are a new way to do audio-only live streams that basically are like a radio show where anyone on X can call in and talk. I recently did one on a long drive, and the subject of original sin came up. And let's just say it was interesting to say the least. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Let's go ahead and go to the next speaker. We're going to go to Disciple Tulip. I have a feeling that you're probably going to have a different point of view than me. Disciple Tulip, welcome on. Are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's your name, if you don't mind?
Disciple. I just go by Disciple.
Okay, cool, Disciple. And you're and I'm assuming that you're a Protestant Calvinist, just by the reference to tulip?
Yes, I am a Calvinist, and I would like to make a few statements. I was listening a little earlier, you guys were talking about Calvinism, and I'd like to point out that I think you guys are misunderstanding Calvinism because you're not taking some you're missing some components there, I think. I mean,
awesome. I just, I'm glad that I want to hear these corrections. I want to make sure that I don't misrepresent Calvinism. And so if I've misrepresented something, help me understand
no problem.
What is the proper way to understand the Calvinistic view of salvation?
So to address the one guy said something about that we seem like an elite crowd, like we're the chosen ones, and we just like Calvinists are like, holding their heads high. As a Calvinist, I don't know that I'm saved or not. I have confidence that I am, but I don't go around, boasting that I'm saved or anything like that. It's not like I'm a chosen one. It's like I'm grateful, and that's another thing. I mean, it's more of like thank God that I'm saved. It's not like, oh man, I'm better than everybody else. Because the main view is that, just like you guys are saying, we're fallen, but it's our fault. We have a disease, and God is curing us of this disease. So it's more of like, I thank God, like that I can be saved like that. But there's no way to know.
Could I ask a question? Sure. Though, just on that presupposition that we all are diseased? There's a side to which I agree with that we are all diseased in the sense that we are all fallen and we're all mortal. But I do wonder, why is it that we deserve, I haven't, if Adam did something that caused me to be fallen, I didn't choose that. I didn't choose to exist.
You're right.
I didn't choose to be depraved, and I don't understand how there's a moral.
I get it. I get what you're asking. So let me put it this way: when the world looks at America, we have one guy that's leading us. Like, they look at one guy, and it's the same way. Adam is the high position. He's the corporate head of. And I mean, in Romans, it talks about that one man got us into this, and one man will get us out. Just like that, Jesus is the corporate head who represents man and connects us back to God. So that's kind of the way.
But why would I? But I guess I can understand that we suffer the effects of Adam's transgression. What I can't understand is why I would be in some way morally culpable for his behavior. For example, just because I'm an American, would I be culpable for the actions of Donald Trump if I didn't vote for him, I don't support what he's doing, and then he does something horrific? Would it be justified for me to be punished, even though I opposed everything that he stood for and did?
As a nation, yes. I mean, here's the thing. Like, you look at Germany in World War II. I mean, did they not pay? They paid back a debt, essentially. They were responsible, but even like the citizens, many citizens, I'm sure, were against the war.
So do you think that the civilians who were killed by Allied bombs, little girls and little boys who were blown to bits,
Do you think that they morally deserved that because they lived in Hitler's Germany, even if they opposed Hitler?
Sorry, wait. You're saying essentially that I'm trying to wrap around what you just said. So, and I apologize. I'm driving.
I guess no. You're fine. I'm driving as well. So I guess this is what I'm trying to understand. An individual in my moral universe,
Yeah,
is only responsible morally for their own behavior.
of course.
Okay, so if Donald Trump does something terrible, or let's use the example of the German children. Let's say there was a group of children in Germany, them and their parents hated Hitler, and they got killed in one of the Allied bombings. Would they have deserved that fate? Or was that a great injustice and terrible thing that happened? And that it's actually immoral that the innocent suffer because of someone else's behavior?
I think it's more along the lines of paying a debt back. I don't think that the debt that Germany owes America is everybody dies. That's not the debt that they owe. I mean, between God and man. So, I mean, in Genesis 15, there's a contract made between Abraham and God, and the debt is blood, and that is why Jesus died.
But aren't contracts like? What if I never signed that contract?
You did.
What if I never was part of Adam's decision to disobey God? Why is it that I'm being punished for what he did if I totally am against what Adam did?
I don't think your opinion would matter in this. Like it's similar to like the government system. I mean, we vote on things all the time, and they go against what I want all the time.
Yeah, but here a perfectly moral judge will judge people as individuals, not as groups of people who didn't even ascend to be a part of a particular group.
So let me ask you this then. At this point, with this frame that you've got here, how can Jesus bear your sins?
How can Jesus bear my sins?
Yeah, you're saying that we are going to be judged based on our actions. How does Jesus provide any salvation to you whatsoever? How can he possibly take your sins?
He can pay the debts that I have incurred personally if I allow him to do that. In fact, he already did pay the debt. The only question is if I'm going to accept the gift of the money that's sitting there to pay my debts, right? But my whole point is that the debts themselves, the only debts that I have are the debts that I incurred. I don't have debts that are on a moral level. It's immoral to say that someone else has to pay the debt that I owe. Now, Jesus is the one who went in and voluntarily said, I will pay the debt, but the debt he's paying, yes, it is Adam's debt, and he basically does that for everyone. That's my personal view on it, and that's the universal sort of gift that he gives. But the other part of the debt is our own, not the debt of Adam, and the effect of his sin or his transgression that put us in a fallen world, but rather, okay, but what about me personally? Because I can't be punished for actions that I didn't myself commit. That would be unjust. You would never look at any other person who's punishing someone else for the sins of another and say this is good unless they voluntarily were the ones who had accepted the fact that they wanted to suffer those consequences in order to pay the debt or to take the punishment that someone else deserves. So if I guess this is the fundamental question is this: why would an innocent baby be guilty of sin because Adam did something. I can understand that they inherit a fallen body and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But it's another thing to say that they deserve punishment, eternal punishment, because of something that they never did. You see that's where I get kind of like...
No, I understand. I understand. And the thing is, I'm looking at... This is all me looking at the Bible and getting this from the Bible. Like, the Bible narrative. I mean, you look at Israel as a nation. That's always what you hear, is Israel as a nation, acting as a nation. And that's how other nations are punished as nations. They're not punished as individuals, because nations are able to act as a body. And so...
Well, then on what grounds would you say that God is justified in harming an innocent child just because they happen to be in the wrong nation?
In what way is God harming an innocent child? What do you mean, like, God is harming?
Well, like the slaughter of the Amalekites, for example. Men, women, and children were all butchered. So
you need to understand,
because they were part of the wrong nation.
First off, I mean, God himself isn't coming down and smiting people like that. I mean, it's the Israel nation, first off. But second off, didn't
God command it?
He did. He definitely did.
Why would he command the slaughter of innocent children?
Because the nation is a corporate group. It's a
Yeah, but why couldn't God just take out the people that in that corporate group that were collective justice is a terrible thing. It's not just.
Well, that's it happens in the Bible all the time. But another thing, and I just need to say this
that would only lead me to think that the God of the Bible is unjust.
Well,
because no just person believes in collective punishment just because of the group or nation that you're a part of. That's especially when you could do otherwise, when you could literally, God could just zap down all of the people that are bad and leave all the innocent children alone.
But the fact that we are still...
Why would he not do that?
The fact that we are still breathing today is mercy from God. A justice would be me dying. Because Adam sinned.
What did you do? So because Adam sinned, you deserve death?
Because Adam represents all of man. So essentially, means...
Why wouldn't you represent you?
What that means is we would all have done the exact same thing that Adam did. Every one of us. We're born in this body that we're driven to do anything against God.
But I didn't do that. And didn't God give Adam the nature that he had? Like, couldn't God have created Adam in such a way that Adam wouldn't have chosen to disobey God? Could God not create a perfectly obedient creature?
Adam did what he did. It's interesting to look at Adam and Eve's story, because Adam did what he did almost in loving intention. His wife, Eve, ate of the fruit and was deceived by the snake. And so in love, he joined her in her fallen sort of, I guess, stage. I mean, at that point, they weren't fallen, I guess. But what I mean is, like, he joined her in that way, but broke a contract. And that's where he's the one that sinned. So essentially, I mean, man was made good in the beginning. Everything was good in the beginning. Everything that is bad is because of the fallen state of the world, the fallen state of, Adam's fall. And so,
and I get that. I have questions and issues with that, but I want to go back to the heart of my confusion. Why is it that an innocent 1-year-old little cute baby deserves death and is totally depraved and is worthy of eternal damnation in hell because of something that someone else did?
Because I guess this is where we're diverging here, and there's this disconnect. You have to understand the Calvinist, like, the fall of man, the total depravity. We're in a state of total depravity. We're in a state of
I'm questioning. I'm questioning why would a baby
God is
be in a
doing,
state of total why would a baby be in a state of total depravity?
because God is doing what is just. I mean, a baby may be innocent on earth.
It's just to kill a baby because of someone else's.
God is not killing the baby. We all succumb to
but you're
death.
saying, but would you say that a baby is worthy of death because of their total depraved state?
We're all worthy of death, which is why we're all
Okay.
mortal.
So that's yes. The baby is worthy of death. My question is, why is the baby worthy of death if the baby has not done anything wrong?
Other than being born into this world as a creature, man. That's essentially
so just because you are born, but what is immoral about being born?
because Adam
There's nothing
sinned.
immoral about you. You didn't even choose it.
Because you would have chosen it. You are in a state of total depravity. You're the son of Adam. You are like, we inherit this sin.
I can see where we inherit so there's a distinction here. There's a part of this to where I think you're right. I do believe that baby has inherited a disease. Okay? But you don't put people in prison and punish them because they inherited a disease. You put people in prison and punish them because of the things that they did.
I think the problem here is you're not realizing that it is a contract that was broken.
When did the baby make that contract?
When Adam made the contract. When man made the contract with God.
But a contract, basic justice says that you are not responsible for contracts that you never entered into yourself with your own free will.
Where does it say that in the Bible? Like, where does that, like, I'm telling you that if you look at the
I know somewhere in Ecclesiastes it does talk about that men will be punished for their own sins and not for the sins of their fathers.
Absolutely. I understand
that. And I would say that, would you be upset if the U.S. government punished you for a contract that you never signed and never agreed to be a part of?
You did, though.
Would be upset because it's unjust.
No, but
that's an injustice.
You did join that contract when you were born. You did join that contract.
Hold on. When you were born, you had to agree to be born? Because a contract requires consent.
I think we're getting way too far down that. Like, I don't think that there's I don't know how to say this. I think you're taking it a little too far. This analogy has gone too far, is essentially what I'm saying. And there's no connection anymore. There is a contract that was made. When you are born, you are in that contract. It doesn't matter whether you want to be or not. But the thing is, you will die one day. That is the point. Like, man dies.
Right. In that I agree. You have inherited the disease of death and the disease of being mortal. That I agree. But there's a difference between, again, someone inheriting a disease, which I agree, and inheriting guilt from someone else. Because I just don't think that that's even possible. I think that that's a contradiction, because the laws of justice themselves dictate that it is unjust to punish someone for actions that they never committed themselves.
The evidence that you signed the contract, here's a point of view. The evidence that you signed the contract is in the fact that you know right from wrong, that you reap the benefits of eating the fruit, is essentially, I guess, a way I could put it. There's, like, I mean, you, like, hey, let me ask you this.
Real quick, let me give a point of agreement. I actually agree with that. I think I did inherit the ability to choose between good and evil and to have some sort of a knowledge of good and evil. I actually believe that I did inherit that.
But one thing that comes with that is mortality and death. Now,
you're right, but if I choose evil, the evil that I choose, I'm accountable to. The good I choose, I'm also, credited with. So just having the ability to choose good and evil isn't in and of itself an evil and punishable act.
I think that the way that I'm trying to think of how to put this. I'm not very articulate, so I apologize.
No, you're fine. And I'm sorry. I'm. By the way, I hope you know I'm really pushing hard on this right now, and I admire you for going with it and trying to deal with it. These are complicated topics, obviously,
of course, yeah.
and I don't want you to be.
I think
feel like I'm trying to pin you or anything.
No, not at all. I think the biggest thing, the biggest thing that I want you to know is I fall back on the Bible every time. Like that's where I think that's where we're like the authority that I'm speaking from would be biblical narrative. Like just reading the Bible, the way I see it, the way it is, it's like the total depravity. The whole 5 points. I think that it's a slam dunk. It's very apparent to me, but it's difficult to. And like I said, I'm not very good with quoting scripture and whatnot. But from what I've read, I don't think that they're like even if God, like let's say, and this was one thing that John Calvin held, which I don't hold this view, but John Calvin made a point that it's kind of like even God, God doesn't need to, justify himself. He's God. He can do what he wants. He is justice, no matter what he does. And I think that there is a dilemma with some Calvinists, and it goes into at some point it's like how much has God actually predestined for us to do certain things? I don't know how much of my life is predestined. I personally hold that it's essentially salvation that is predestined, but I do believe that God orchestrates things. But I don't believe that there is an injustice in God. I think that all men are guilty, and God has already essentially given us the verdict. We are going to die, and that's the end of it. You die. You go to hell. You die. But that's our destination right now, and I think that keeping that in mind and then realizing that Jesus going to the cross as God the Father, or not God the Father, but God himself, 100% God, Jesus himself going to the cross, it changes the whole story. If you look at like the LDS Jesus, he's not God. He's a God, but he's not like God. There's one God in the Calvinist sense, and he went to the cross and died for us, and that changes the whole story.
Yeah. No, I actually have a lot of respect for the Calvinist perspective in many ways, even though I have really strong disagreements, because I do think a lot of times it takes certain notions of omnipotence and sovereignty, for example, and it does take them to their logical conclusion. Now, I have issues because I think that the logical conclusion that it comes to creates a God that is, is unjust in certain ways, as we've kind of discussed. Which for me, it's sort of like if my interpretation of the Bible leads me to a God that is unjust, then there's either God is unjust or I don't understand the scriptures right and need to kind of go back and reassess the way I'm interpreting and understanding these biblical stories.
For sure.
So, and I think that, ultimately we're not going to come to a consensus between the two of us, but I appreciate you coming on. And any final thoughts before I move on to the next caller?
No, that's it. I'm gonna get back to work. So I appreciate you letting me on. So
yeah, of course. I appreciate the conversation. I really do. Thanks for sparring with me.
We'll see ya.
All right, take care. I'm gonna go real quick. Hold on one moment, everybody. Welcome on. Are you there?
Hello.
How's it going, sir?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, I guess I'm kind of interested in the question you had for Disciple, or where you were taking that conversation. It seems like you're kind of focused on the babies, the like innocent babies being killed.
Yeah. The main point I'm trying to make in that conversation, and the reason I use babies as an example, is because a baby certainly seems to be innocent. That's people's intuition about a little 1-year-old cute cuddly baby, is that that baby doesn't deserve any sort of punishment because it's a baby. But the total depravity view is that that baby deserves hell. Not just that that baby will go to hell, it's that the baby deserves it. And I've always found that to be like, okay, that's a bold claim. Why? And I've never found it convincing to say that because Adam did something, that means the baby deserves hell. Not just that the baby will suffer consequences because of Adam, but that the baby deserves those consequences that it gets in a moral sense. And so that's why I wanted to focus on the babies and the idea of collective punishment rather than punishment based on individual actions.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the baby argument, I guess. I mean, was Hitler a baby?
Yes, he was a baby and he was innocent until later in his life when he did terrible things.
Okay. All the serial killers that we know about, were they babies?
Absolutely. And they were totally innocent until they began to commit acts of horrendous injustice and sin.
Yeah. I guess I would say, and I think Disciple would agree with me, like, I think the position of sort of the Calvinists, the Reformed, most Baptist, Presbyterians, and Lutherans would be that, the taint of sin is in, the DNA of all humans. So, a baby that grows up to be Hitler, or a baby that grows up to be a serial killer, is no different in the eyes of God than a baby, from a sinful standpoint, that is, than a baby that dies because of a disease or some tragic accident. So I don't think the Bible seems to say that we all have. I know Disciple was mentioning like the disease. I think you said that too. Like, it just seems like that is what the Bible is saying. Psalms, Isaiah, Paul repeats the Psalms in Romans. This idea that, like, no one is righteous, no one seeks after God. I've posted in the chat, or I guess it's the chat area, Isaiah 64, 5-7, verse 6, we have all become like one who's unclean, and all our righteous deeds are like a polluted garment. And I think we're all adults here, so most historians understand that to mean a woman's discharge. So, it's like that's the way. So your most righteous deeds, God views them as a dirty tampon. So that's in the Bible.
Yeah, no, and there's a sense to which I don't think that we earn our way to heaven. Okay, I think that we are truly lost without Christ. With that in mind, I do not believe that the baby who has not done anything is guilty of anything. They would be someone who is in a state of, like, they haven't actually used their moral agency for good or for evil. Because you say, well, the baby could grow up to be a serial killer, could grow up to be Hitler. The baby could also grow up to be Mother Teresa. So the whole thing is with a baby is that there's a potential there that has not been realized. And that potential is for good or for evil. And to punish someone that has not committed acts of evil is to be unjust. The assumption that we are inherently deserving of punishment simply because we exist I would ask you, how does that make sense? How does it make sense that someone who's never done anything wrong is not only, it isn't like they inherited a disease. It's like they're being punished as if they did something horrible. And we're saying that that's justified. How is that the case? How can you say that is if you or anyone were to do that, to punish someone who didn't do anything to deserve that punishment, you would call that person horrible? Like that would violate the most basic notions of justice. So why is there this like, is God not just? Because
So
if he's just, he wouldn't do that.
From your point of view, it seems like the fork in the road is, this position or this point in time where a child essentially chooses to sin and sort of unlocks, their sin nature that maybe was in potential. It sounds like you're agreeing that like Adam sort of like opened Pandora's box, but it's not that the disease was given to us and passed down through the generations. It's sort of like the potential was there.
I believe it. I believe the disease of mortality and a fallen nature is ours. But you don't send someone to jail because they inherited a disease. Punishment is reserved for people who do something wrong. Cure and healing is what is offered to those who are infected with a disease.
Okay.
You see that, like, and so my thing, I don't dispute that we've inherited a disease. I don't dispute that at all. And I believe even the baby has inherited a disease, the disease of a mortal body and death and all the rest of it, that needs to be redeemed. But I'm talking about moral culpability and the deserving of punishment, because total depravity, that doctrine states that we are deserving of not just that we have a disease. I agree with that. It's that we deserve to be punished for some reason. And that reason is because of what Adam did. And I'm just like, imagine saying that my child should be punished because of what I did when they didn't do anything wrong. And that they deserve to be punished. And that's where the disconnect is.
Yeah, I mean,
for me, I don't understand it.
I would say, like, again, the Bible seems to speak to these things, specifically, Romans 9, talking about Isaac and Sarah. I'm sorry. Well, Rebecca and Isaac, Abraham and Sarah. And it says, regarding like Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls, she was told the older will serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. And again, some people try to like soften hated. What does that really mean? But, this whole section, Romans 9, is talking about God's sovereign choice, his ability as the creator God to decide who's going to be saved, who's not, who's going to be elect, who's not.
And does he decide arbitrarily?
No, and that's I don't know if it, and I'll probably get a little bit of flack.
Well, then, but that's my question then. If he doesn't choose arbitrarily, then on what criteria does he choose who is and who is not?
Okay, I'll tell you. And this might get me might get a little bit of flack, but in my studying the Bible, I feel like this is the section that seems to explain the best reason. So, are you familiar with the parable of the weeds?
Yes.
Okay, Matthew 13. Are you familiar with Jesus' explanation of the parable of the weeds?
Yes.
Okay, I'll read it just so anybody who is not. So, well, let me read both.
This is the wheat and the tares.
Yes,
correct.
And the tares,
yes.
Like historically, agriculture. It's a darnel is the plant that basically looks like wheat at a young state. So that if you go to, if you look at it, it looks like wheat early on, and then at a certain point of maturity, it looks different. But so parable of weeds, I'll just read this. He put another parable before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But when his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, an enemy has done this. So the servant said to him, you do not want us to go and gather them? But then he said, no, lest in gathering the weeds, you will root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the harvest time, I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat in my barn. So much like many of the other parables, it's like, okay, what does that mean? Well, we have the explanation from Jesus. And it's the mustard seed and the leaven and the prophecy of parables section is between those two. But verse 36, Matthew 13, this is the explanation by Jesus. Then he left the crowds and went into the house. The disciples came to him saying, explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field. He answered, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who's sown them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let them hear. So I think the answer that I have told myself is, it seems like, for whatever reason, God has allowed the devil to place souls on earth. So some percentage of humanity is sons of the kingdom. Some percentage of the humanity is sons of the devil. The elect are always the sons of the kingdom. The non-elect are always the sons of the devil. If you look at most of the parables, nobody usually becomes another thing. Goats do not become sheep. Women who, the virgins who don't have the oil don't become ones with oil. It's always a binary of, there's not this like transformation.
So you would posit that certain people on Earth are actually inherently sort of like sons of the devil and not sons of God, and therefore, I mean.
So then,
what do you?
So then let me add this.
I mean, doesn't
let me add this to the mix?
How do we?
Let me add this to the mix, because I think if you understand this layers, and again, not a lot of people teach this. I'm just saying this is what I've gleaned from the Bible in my study. So then in Romans, after he talks about Jacob and Esau, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. So I'm positing that Jacob is a son of the kingdom and Esau is a son of the devil. That's why. So it says, before they have done anything, good or bad, in the order of God's purpose of election might continue, not because it works, because of him who calls. Okay, so the next section is him arguing.
I just want, just so I understand something.
Yeah.
So, in your view, will any of the sons of God be lost?
No.
Like, okay, so.
And there's tons of biblical evidence for that.
That's fine. Okay, so we're in this world that's a mixture of like good guys and bad guys, essentially.
Well,
sons of God and sons of the devil.
But they're not good because they're still sinful humans. So we want to stress that like everybody's a sinner.
Well, and I guess I'm sort of wondering, like, why is God doing any of this?
Okay, so I think Paul kind of touches on that. I'm not saying it's going to, be sufficient for you.
And
You're dropping for a second.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're dropping on us. Are you still there? Okay.
Oh, can anyone hear me?
I can hear you a little bit. I can hear you now.
Sorry, go ahead and explain. Go ahead and explain. Sorry, I'm in a bad area.
Okay, so that next section in Romans 9, Paul says, what shall we say then? Is there injustice on God's part? By no means. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I have compassion. So then it depends not on human will or exertion, but on God who has mercy. For the scripture says to Pharaoh, for this very purpose I have raised you up, that I might show my power in you, and that my name might be proclaimed in all the earth. So then he has mercy on whom he wills, and he hardens whomever he wills. And you will say to me then, why does he still find fault? For who can resist his will? But who are you, O man, to answer back to God? Will what is molded say to the molder, why have you made me like this? Has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump of one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? What if God, desiring to show his wrath and to make known his power, has endured with much patience vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, in order to make known the riches of his glory for vessels of mercy, which he prepared beforehand for glory? Even us whom he has called, not from the Jews only, but also from the Gentiles. And it goes on from there. But I think, again,
And as I listen to that, I say, okay, so there are certain people in this world that were basically the only reason that they're here is to be vessels of his wrath.
yes,
Like Anne Frank, for instance, who was a Jew who never accepted
yes,
Jesus and therefore deserved everything that she got and was to serve as a vessel of wrath.
yes.
Now I look at that and say, okay, why would a being that does that be worthy of worship? Create a sentient little girl like Anne Frank just so that he could suffer and beat her and burn her. It's one thing to create a lump of clay into something that you might like or not like. It's another thing to take a sentient human little girl and torture her and then have people say, oh, well, you have to worship that God as the all good God. Like, I have no idea why anyone would consider such a being to be good who tortures little girls who never did anything wrong.
Well, she did sin. She is a sinner. Like, Anne Frank was not
if
perfect.
you're right, I'm a sinner and you're a sinner too, and we all do things that are stupid. But just because I do a sin, I have a small sin. I lied on that geography test, and I peeked at one of the answers in my book. Does that mean that a basic law of justice is that the punishment should fit the crime? And so to say that a person like Anne Frank, for whatever small sins she did as a little girl, deserved a Holocaust starvation death and then an eternity of burning in torment, even worse than the concentration camp for eternity, and that state of affairs exists because a quote unquote all good God created those circumstances and designed things that way, and you're expecting people to think that this is a God that, if they existed, that I would actually say, yes, we should worship that God as the all good creator? Like, what? I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense from a human point of view. Like, if you have a human-centered theology, it doesn't make sense. If you have a God-centered theology,
I don't think it makes. I mean, it doesn't make it. If you have a God-centered theology, then what that means is that anything God does is good, no matter how unjust it is from your perspective.
correct. Yeah,
And therefore,
because he's God, and God is perfect. He is love. He can't.
by what standard do you say that he's perfect?
Because he is God. He is the creator of everything. He says.
By what standard do you the problem is that, see, this is where there's a problem though.
Okay.
You can't say that God is good. You can't say that God is perfect, because that has to imply a standard outside of God by which you're judging God to be those things. You actually can't say anything about God if God is indeed what you posit he is the standard by which all things are judged. You can't judge the standard by the standard. God just is.
Well, if
But there
God
is a
says that
question.
he's perfect, you're saying we can't take him on his word?
Yeah, I don't know what that means. For God to say that he is perfect is to say what? Because
He doesn't
because you have to
lie.
have a standard, you have to have a standard by which you judge him. And if the standard by which I'm judging him is the basic notions of justice that I would judge any being by, he fails like spectacularly. Like, why would I ever call a being good if that being's intention is just to arbitrarily torture me and send me to hell for eternity? Like, why would I call that being good? Would you call that being good? Let's say God has not chosen you
Okay.
and you are going to hell. Why would you call God good?
Because it's not how I feel about what happens to me that is the measuring stick of calling a being good. Like,
Okay,
that's a
so
very
what is that?
selfish.
What is the measuring stick of a being good? Like, on what standard are you judging God? Like, and on what standard are you judging the devil to be evil, if not the fact that he leads you towards your ultimate suffering? A being that is going to take you to the ultimate suffering with you being unable to do anything about it, just because he has arbitrarily said, "I haven't chosen you," that being would be the devil. That would be the worst being of all. It's like arbitrarily calling the devil good. Well, he's good because he's all powerful and he's the creator of all things. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what he does. He can do anything that he wants, and I'll call it good. And that's my point: is that this just results in an incoherence. Because if God truly is just whatever he does is good, then you can't call. You're not even making a judgment, because a judgment requires you to judge one thing against another thing. All you can say is that God is.
Yeah, but I think that the issue that I'm hearing from you more than that sort of like that's kind of removed from the Bible, but just looking at like sort of the punishment of the Anne Franks of the world, the little babies, innocent babies, like it seems like the issue is more with damning people that
Are
you
innocent.
well, people that you perceive as innocent. But
Well, but the burden is on you to demonstrate
I
why
just
that person
I just read you from the Bible why that's the point. Is like I
no,
think
the Bible, those biblical verses that you cited do not make an argument. They just make a statement.
okay.
And I'm understanding what is the argument that says why God would be justified in sending Anne Frank to suffer eternally in hell. Like,
Because
what is the argument there?
assuming it again, we're assuming that there's no secret letters that she became a Christian. There's no what we understand
Yes.
historically about her is true.
We can make up here. The reality is this: we can make up any, maybe she this or that, but that until you demonstrate that actually happened, the assumption must be that unless there was something else that happened that we don't know about, she is in hell. And there obviously are tons of people like her. She's just one story of
Mm-hmm.
people that never accepted Jesus, that were in those concentration camps, that were little kids, that didn't do anything meriting a Holocaust. Or do you believe that
No,
they actually so if they didn't deserve the Holocaust, why would they deserve a punishment far worse than the Holocaust?
because I think we're talking about sort of the spiritual, eternal thing, not the. I mean, you could say the same thing. Like, did Solomon deserve?
But that only compounds the problem, because it makes the injustice not just a temporary injustice, because at least they could escape the concentration camp through death. You're saying that they, for some reason, are worthy of a punishment far worse than a concentration camp,
Well, do you
and that
think?
they deserved it. And I'm just wondering, what did they do to deserve it?
Do you think Pharaoh's life was problematic before he met Moses?
Sure, I guess.
I mean, I'm thinking he lived a good life. He was a god king. He had any woman he wanted. he didn't have to do manual labor. Like Pharaoh's life was cush before
Oh,
Moses.
was it Cush? Oh yeah, okay, sure.
So he lived an amazing life by human standards, probably better than any rap mogul, probably as good as any billionaire inventor, but he's not in heaven. So I don't think like looking
Well,
at
no, but your reward in the next life, it is about living a cush life. It's about living a moral life, a life that is that is seeking God and is seeking, heaven. And if you seek, ye shall find. Right. And so I do believe that people that don't want and don't seek heaven will get something else. And people will get what they ultimately want and desire. My thing though is that if we're positing that punishment is going to be inflicted, in order for a punishment to be justified, there must be a reason for the punishment that justifies such a punishment being given. And frankly, like I just
but being a son of the devil or a daughter of the devil is not good enough for you.
Well, on what grounds are you claiming that Anne Frank was a child of the devil?
Because she never accepted Jesus Christ as her personal savior, and Jesus tells us in the explanation of the parable of weeds that that's the binary. So, like, you can't retroactively go back and say, "Oh, well, I actually think Anne Frank was a good person, so let's just change which team she's on." Like, that's not how it works. So, because she's dead, I mean, I'm not happy about it.
Isn't the parable of the wheat and the tares ultimately about two things that look very similar, and you can't tell which one is actually a wheat and which one is actually a tare until their works are manifest and show what they are and they bear forth fruit?
No, it doesn't say anything about that. It just says, I mean, there is the agricultural point that they look similar, but
But that's sort of the point of the parable. Is that
no? I think the point of the parable. I think the point of the
is that what a person actually is manifest by the fruit that comes from them.
I think the point of the parable is how it got there, because in the parable he says an enemy has done this, but in the explanation he says they're sowed by the devil. I mean, what Sunday school class has anybody ever attended where the nice old lady says, "Okay, children, just so you know, some of you or some of your classmates were put here on earth by the devil"? I mean, because you can't interpret 36 through 43 of Matthew 13 any different. It's not like, I wonder if he means this. It's black and white.
And this is where it's one of the fundamental issues I have with a lot of the Calvinist sort of interpretations. They ultimately lead to a God that's a monster, so far as I can tell. But there's my thing is this: if your interpretation of the Scripture leads you to contradictions, like the idea that God arbitrarily is choosing who he will save, and that God is committing acts of injustice, then I question those interpretations as valid, because I don't believe that you can have these sort of contradictory messages where in one breath you say that God is perfectly just, and then in the second breath you say that he arbitrarily chooses who he's going to punish and who he's going to reward, not based on anything except for his arbitrary sort of whim, or his, and in this case, allowing the devil to plant evil people in the world that deserve his wrath. Like, again, even the very, like, if God is truly all powerful, certainly he could have stopped that, right?
Well, okay, so what did Jesus's sacrifice on the cross accomplish?
I don't know. You tell me. I'm curious from your perspective, because I have a different perspective.
He saved his people, the elect, his sheep. My sheep hear my voice, from eternal punishment because of their sin.
Okay, so here's my question: why didn't God just snap his fingers? Why did Jesus have to die on a cross? Why didn't he just save them? Why didn't he just take the devil away from it? Why didn't he just redeem everyone? Why is Jesus dying on that cross?
I mean, I think you have to go back to the temple sacrifice. Like disciples said, there was a blood covenant.
Yeah, but
Abraham.
but it goes even beyond that. But why? Why was there a blood covenant? Why in the garden? Why was there a snake in the garden?
I can't
Why
answer
did God
those.
put it?
I can't answer those questions for you. I guess I'm trying to help.
No. My point is that when you take the entire narrative and try and make sense of it,
Yeah.
there are so many not minor problems. These are massive problems where all you end up with is an arbitrary God choosing arbitrary things for no reason at all. Jesus is dying on the cross even though he doesn't have to. There's a snake in the garden even though it doesn't have to be there. If God is truly all powerful, then why is all of this happening at all, instead of it simply being that he created his children to be happy forever?
I think you're assuming that at the end of the story, those who are in heaven are gonna not say, okay, I get it. I think the allusion in Romans, 9, Paul saying to make known the riches of his glory for vessels of mercy, in order to make known.
God is so through this experience, we're gaining some sort of a knowledge that makes us appreciate the glory that God has for his chosen.
Correct.
Is that what this is about? Now, if that's the case, I would ask, why can't an all-powerful God give us that without all of the rigmarole? Are you implying there's some kind of a limit on God's ability to convey knowledge to us and appreciation?
No, I'm saying he set up history to happen the way that it's going to happen in order to show his power, his mercy, his justice, his grace, all those things.
Why couldn't he give us all of that knowledge directly without all of the history and problems and suffering and pain and all of that? Are you saying that that's not possible? That God is somehow limited in his ability to convey knowledge to us?
It might not be possible for humans because, again, we differ in that I don't think humans are the same thing as God.
But certainly if God created us, he could have created us with the knowledge of appreciation and all of those kinds of things. But he isn't limited in what he can create. He could create beings that are full of knowledge and grace and truth and love and all of it just with the snap of his fingers. Right? Or is he limited?
I don't think he's limited. I'm saying this is the way that it was created. There was only one.
And agreed. And my point is, in the words of the great Calvinist apologist, who I actually really like, Greg Bonson, that is arbitrary. That means that he just chose to do it for no reason. And then he chooses who to save for just cause. Like there's no reason, except for you can say, okay, well he's choosing to save his own children.
The sons of the kingdom.
It just pushes, you're right, the sons of the kingdom. I'm saying though, but why is there anyone else? Why is he allowing the devil to sow weeds in his field? Why is all of this happening? The problem with the Calvinistic view, as far as I see it, is that it creates a story in where God is an arbitrary tyrant who inflicts punishment on Anne Frank because of nothing that she did, and gives her a punishment for and so my whole thing is this: is you can say, okay, well, but this is the way that I interpret the Bible. I would challenge, or at least begin to ask people to question that interpretation, because that interpretation leads to a conception of God that not only is not, in my estimation, is not worthy of worship, but is worthy of the greatest condemnation that can be imaginable, simply because it violates not just human conceptions of justice, just any conception of justice. The very meaning of the word justice, to get what you deserve. Like, you have to posit that Anne Frank deserved to be in that concentration camp. You have to posit that, because you're positing at the same time that she deserved something even worse than that concentration camp.
No, because I don't think that in your life you don't, what you get, what you receive, blessings and curses aren't necessarily equal to what your how faithful you are, how righteous you are. You know, people that are complete a-holes win the lottery. They become professional athletes. People that are very nice people for all intents and purposes are janitors in prisons. You know, there's things that like people have to go through in life that, you know, you would look at their life and you're like, oh man, their life sucks, or oh wow, their life is amazing. And it has nothing to do with like whether they're a good person or not. So I think that,
and I agree with that, but that's my whole point. We recognize that as a problem. Our thing is that we recognize that when people are being rewarded arbitrarily or punished arbitrarily, that's like the meaning of injustice. That's the thing that we look to God to remedy, is to fix the injustices so that all of the accounts balance, and that people get what they deserve.
But again, I think the thing that I think you're missing is that the people who aren't elect, the people who don't end up in heaven, it's not just like they're like the black sheep, I guess, if you want to take the sheep analogy. It's not the sheep and the black sheep, or the sheep that are slightly dirty. Like, you know, the Bible says they're goats. It's a different type of animal. Sheep do sheep things, goats do goaty things. And so, like, going back to this Matthew 13, you know, the parable of the wheat and the tares, in the explanation, he's saying, like, essentially, I, Jesus, the Son of Man, put the sons of the kingdom, aka the elect, aka the sheep, on the earth. The weeds, son of the evil one, were put here by the devil. So it's not about like, oh, Anne Frank or my grandma or my Boy Scout leader, anybody who you think was like a good person. That's not what it's about. God is saying there's a binary, and again, you can question, well, why did he allow it? Like, this is where we're at. Like, this is the truth. So, like, you can complain about, like, I don't like the rules of the game, blah, blah, blah. This is not fair. The referee's a jerk. But, like, this is where we're at. So you kind of have to decide.
But see, that's saying this is where we're at, again, is a statement of the arbitrary. It's to say that's just the way it is. And God just decided to do this. But you do have to step back and say, well, if it didn't have to be this way, why is it this way? And that says something about the person that made it this way. And so if we are going to try and evaluate, is the God that you posit worthy of worship? I look at the game that he put together and I say, this isn't worthy of worship. If this is the game that he put together, he's worthy of condemnation as a monster. Because I can think of 10,000 better games to play than this one. You would say, oh, well, you're not God, so you can't do this. Like, fine. But I don't think that being is God, because that sort of a being wouldn't be worthy of the title of God.
And I think there are examples in the Bible, like Abraham. There's no way that Abraham didn't even fully understand like Jesus as the Jesus we know. We can look back at the Bible and understand Jesus, but like looking forward, Abraham knew there was a promise of a savior, and that's pretty much all he knew. And he believed that, and that's how it was counted to him as righteousness. But when he went to take his son up to murder him, he was doing it because God told him to. He didn't stop and say, you know what? You know, if I look down at history...
You're right. But that posits that ultimately remember, he didn't end up giving up his son.
But he was going to.
And God,
he
right.
was raising his... I mean, again, we don't...
That God... The whole point is that he got to keep his son because he was willing to give up his son. And that's the whole point of the story.
I think the whole point is that he got...
You have to trust...
I think
you have to trust God.
I think the whole point of this of the story is that he got to keep his son because a sacrifice was provided. I mean, that's like one of the best, types and
Yeah,
shadows
yeah,
of Jesus.
and because of his willingness to do that, that's why the sacrifice was provided. It's a story of trusting God because ultimately there is a reason behind it. My point is that I actually do believe that there is a reason behind all of these things. I don't believe that God is an arbitrary monster, but my thing is that ultimately I struggle with the Calvinistic explanation because I don't think it does provide an explanation. It just says this is just the way it is, and you just have to accept it because God is God, and yeah, and I'm just sort of like, well, fine, call whatever this being is that designed this horrible, monstrous system whatever you want, but I can't call that being good because goodness implies a just being, and giving people what they don't deserve and giving it arbitrarily is literally the inverse of justice. And so, anyway, we've been going back and forth a lot. I'm gonna give you the final word here, and then we'll wrap this up.
No, I appreciate the time. Yeah, I don't. I think the thing is, I think most of us who believe in Calvinism and sort of the doctrines of grace, as other people like to call it, it comes from the text. Like, I think it's in the text. It's not just, oh, I have a decoder ring and now all these verses look Calvinistic to me. It's like a lot of like the Matthew 13 thing. Like, I never really even paid that much attention to those parables. And then later on, I was like, wait a minute, this really seems to make more sense fitting it with Calvinism. So, and that's what the Bible, I think, clearly teaches. I can't really argue philosophy and, whether the God of the Bible from a human perspective is just or fair or not a monster. Like, I don't know I could ever argue one way or the other for that. I think to me, it's what does the Bible say? And I think, when you walk away reading, especially the entire New Testament, it's very apparent that, this is the way that things are because God chose to set things up that way. And, you could question God till you're blue in the face, but I think, it's more about dealing with that reality. Are you just going to not pay your taxes? Or are you going to suck it up, pay your taxes, and,
Yeah.
So.
No, I can see you're coming from there. No, I thank you for sharing your perspective.
Yeah. And I would say we got cut off last time. Like, if you ever do another one, I would like to finish my thought about the law and gospel distinction, because I think that kind of ties in with all of this and the whole sort of LDS versus Protestant, debate that's out there.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for your time.
No problem. Take care. Hold on a moment here. All right. Got a lot of listeners here. So, obviously, a lot of disagreements there. I genuinely do struggle interpret. I guess one of the things I struggle with Calvinistic views a lot of times is there's such an assurity of their interpretation of the Bible that I and then it comes down to like, well, there's my interpretation and yours, and I think one of the things for me is that I look for an interpretation. The one that resonates with me is one that actually makes sense, that doesn't create contradictions all over the place in the biblical text, and that's one of the problems that I think arise from those interpretations. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel about that, and it would be. Basic terms like good and evil and just and unjust and those kind of things to say that, oh, well, that's just like the way we think about it as humans and not the way that God thinks about it. Well, it's like if God has a totally different standard of morality than we do, then then we can't judge God. We can't say he's good because apparently whatever he does, even if it's punishing Anne Frank, is it's just like you have to accept it. And that to me is, I would rather that isn't actually from God. I have no reason to believe that interpretation is actually from God, and so I don't believe it's from God. And Anne Frank is most assuredly being dealt with in the spirit world, as LDS theology would teach, in a loving and merciful manner based on the knowledge that she had. And she will have her opportunity to continue to grow or to stop her progress as she desires. Ultimately, the LDS view is not that God arbitrarily picks winners and losers, and not only that we earn our salvation. It's more a question of our willingness to follow Jesus Christ and to allow Him to transform us. He's very I don't think that held view that and that view, um, besides being problematic in I think a lot of different ways, is to say that Anne Frank was actually a child of the devil that was here, and that therefore they're predestined to burn in hell, and certain people are predestined to receive eternal glory. And yeah, I don't think that's very consistent with what the Bible teaches, and not only that, I think that to posit that you're kind of surrounded by people that are good or evil, children of the light or children of the devil, and that people can't change from what they are, is just to, why preach to all nations, kindreds, tongues, and people if only the elect are the ones that are going to be saved? The elect are the people who are willing, not the people that are sort of already predestined to a certain thing. And all people have the capacity to either accept or reject Christ. And to say that some people don't because of their nature is a very scary proposition.